"I think we have a problem," he said, when the person on the other end answered. "Go back to the office," the man said before ending the call. For the first time since all this began, George felt real fear. "What's the plan?" asked John. "We have a team meeting not far from Omega headquarters," Regis said, handing him a piece of paper with the address. John memorized it before putting it in his pocket. "I just got word that Black has been deployed at our outpost, so he should be there in an hour or so. Oscar and a few more of our guys will go after you," Regis added. "I'm going to," Houston said. John looked at her in surprise. "For what?" he asked. "It may be dangerous. I don't want you to get hurt." "It's my decision," she said. "I should be next to you. You are my husband. Where you go, I go too." John looked at Houston and saw something new in her eyes, determination. He looked at Regis, who nodded. "This applies to her too," Regis said. John understood and looked back at his wife. "Okay, but follow my instructions." "Understood." "I understand," she replied. They left Regis's office and returned to John's car. Oscar joined the team members who brought him to the compound and followed John as he headed back to town. John and Houston didn't speak much on the way, but John thought about what had happened to his wife. On the one hand, he was worried about her safety, but on the other hand, he was proud of her. This might be interesting, he thought. They drove to the address Regis had given them, and John parked next to the mobile command post, a trailer filled with electronics. He got out of the car and opened the trunk as Oscar's SUV pulled up. John pulled out bulletproof vests and helped Houston put one of them on. "What is this for?" she asked. "I don't want you to get shot," he said. "Remember, do whatever I say." "I understand, John," she said. "I'm not stupid, you know." John smiled and kissed her. "I know," he said, kissing her. His thoughts were interrupted by a loud voice. Smith asked a large man in a dark uniform. "Yes," John and Houston answered simultaneously. The man looked at Houston and then turned to John. "I'm John Smith," he said. "Special Agent Jones, FBI. We are starting the briefing," the agent said. John, Houston, Oscar, and the rest of the team gathered around a large table where Agent Jones explained the layout of the building and their plan of attack. As Jones explained the rather convoluted strategy for how they would get to the top floor, Houston raised her hand. "Yes," Jones asked with dissatisfaction in his voice. "I have a pass that will give us access to the top floor." She said, "Wouldn't this be easier than everything you just described?" John smiled to himself. Jones's face turned red for a moment, but then he took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay, Mrs. Smith," he said. "We will use your pass. You will lead us to the top floor." She smiled sweetly at him when he finished. "Questions?" he asked. Everyone shook their heads. "Okay," he ordered. "Forward." A group of heavily armed agents headed to their original positions. John checked his equipment one last time, making sure he had a full magazine in his pistol. "I'm sorry if I confused you," Houston said, when he finished checking. He looked at her and smiled. "You didn't embarrass me," he said, hugging her. "I'm proud of you. I don't think anyone has ever silenced Jones so quickly." He kissed her and then finished checking his equipment. Oscar joined them, and they headed towards the building. George sat at a large conference table on the top floor of Omega headquarters and listened in shock as Jim Bradbury, the chairman of the board of directors, told him about the destruction of their waterfront complex. "What should we do now?" he asked the older man. "Get rid of all the evidence, idiot," Jim said. "I told you that if you don't start thinking with your head, this will all turn into disaster. But you didn't listen, and now let's get to work." George began to rise from the table when a large man in a dark suit entered the room. "We have a problem," the man said to the two managers. "The FBI is coming." "What?" George asked in surprise. "FBI," the man repeated. "They're everywhere in the building." "Run to the roof," Jim ordered. "I'll call a helicopter." "It's too late," the guard replied. "The FBI has already occupied the roof." "Damn it," George swore. "So what now?" Their conversation was interrupted by a loud noise as FBI agents burst into the room. The security guard reached for his gun, but the FBI agent quickly disarmed him before he could draw his weapon. John, Houston, and Oscar entered the room along with several armed agents. "Now you can become someone's toy in prison," John said, approaching George. He looked at Houston as she approached him. Without saying a word, she hit him with all her might. "I quit," she shouted in his face. John turned him over, cuffed George's hands, and read him his rights. Oscar did the same with Jim. FBI agents dispersed throughout the top floor and arrested the rest of Omega's top managers. All were charged with a range of crimes, including conspiracy to commit treason and human trafficking. Agents also confiscated all of Omega's files and were working to remove them from the building. As they watched the scene around them, John's phone vibrated. He looked at the screen and saw that Alpha 1 was calling. "Smith," he said, answering the call. "John, great job," Regis said. "Thanks, boss," John replied. "Look, why don't you and Houston take the rest of the week off?" Regis said. "On Monday at 7 a.m. she will start training." "Education?" John asked. "Yes," Regis confirmed. "I'm sure you want your new partner to be fully prepared for field work." "Did you say partner?" John asked in surprise. "Of course," Regis replied. "You work well together, and I like her approach. Now, go and enjoy each other while you can." After the conversation ended, John looked at his wife. Having her as a partner would be interesting, he thought to himself. "Is everything okay, honey?" she asked. "Yes," John replied. "Regis gave us the weekend, and then you'll start training." "Train?" she asked. "Yes," John confirmed. "You will be my new partner." She smiled and hugged his neck. "Partner, huh? I like the sound of this. Come on, Mr. Smith. I want to make love to you." "Sounds like a plan," John said. They left the office holding hands and headed home. The senior members of Omega were tried in federal court and found guilty of all charges. They received the maximum possible sentences. Women who were part of the so-called executive support team testified in court, helping to secure a conviction. Greg never recovered from his coma and died of a heart attack the day. The remaining Omega executives were found guilty. 2 months later, John and Regis stood in the gallery, watching Houston train with her hand-to-hand combat instructor. She's come a long way in a short time. Now, she was not the naive woman John had once married. She became a strong, confident woman who could stand up for herself. John was proud of her progress. "Tell me something, Regis," he said, watching his wife. "What?" Regis asked. "Did you do something to her during hypnotherapy?" asked John. "No," Regis answered. "What you see now is the real Houston Smith. We simply helped her realize her inner strength. You haven't changed your mind about her being a partner, right?" "Not at all," said John. "Actually, I'm looking forward to it." "Okay," Regis said. "She only has a few weeks of training left, and then I have a task for you too." "Is it true?" asked John. "Which? Not now," Regis replied. "When she finishes, it's probably already lunchtime. Why don't you take her out to lunch?" "Of course," John said. He walked downstairs and entered the gym just as the instructor was leaving. Houston noticed him, wiped the sweat from her brow, and ran towards him. "What do you say, partner?" she asked, kissing him tenderly. "Great job, but I think you should take a shower before lunch," he said, laughing. She laughed in response and playfully slapped his arm. "After lunch, I'll take you to the shooting range," he added. "Oh, can I play with your gun?" she asked. "You're clearly in a playful mood today," he remarked. "I'll prove it to you tonight when I pounce on you," she said with a smile. She has always been fun in bed, but since she started training, she has turned into a real wild tigress. "I can't wait," John said, watching her head into the shower. He admired her toned legs and buttocks. Yes, he thought, life promised to be very interesting. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you. And go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. 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 Click to the next one.